I'm calling to order this meeting. This is an additional meeting of the Committee of the Whole of the Council of the District of Columbia. I'm Phil Mendelson, Chairman of the Council and Chair of the Committee of the Whole. Today is Tuesday, February 7th, 2023. Time is 11:49 in the morning. This meeting is being conducted primarily live in the council chambers, room 500 of the Johnny Wilson Building, but is also accessible through the Zoom video conference broadcast platform. And I believe there's at least one member who's participating virtually. And this meeting is also being broadcast on Council Channel 13 and is available on the council's website, which is www.dccouncil.gov. This is an additional meeting of the Committee of the Whole. It will be followed by a legislative meeting, which will be the regular legislative meeting for the month of February. There'll be 3 items for markup in the Committee of the Whole, and then there's an additional 4 measures that are being agendized for the legislative meeting through the Committee of the Whole. We begin our Committee of the Whole meetings by determining whether there is a quorum. Mr. Cash, would you call the roll?
Chairman Mendelson.
Present.
Councilmember Allen.
Here.
Councilmember Bonds.
Here.
Councilmember Fruman.
Here.
Councilmember Gray.
Here.
Councilmember Henderson.
Here.
Councilmember Lewis George. Councilmember Lewis George. Councilmember McDuffie.
Here.
Councilmember Nadeau.
Here.
Councilmember Parker.
Here.
Councilmember Pinto.
Present.
Councilmember Robert White.
Present.
Councilmember Trayon White.
Present.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Cash. The first item for markup is PR 25-8, which is the District of Columbia Auditor Kathleen Patterson Reappointment Approval Resolution of 2023. The purpose of this resolution would be to approve and to actually make the reappointment of Kathy Patterson as the District of Columbia Auditor for a 6-year term to end February 25th, 2029. The Office of the District of Columbia Auditor was established by Congress through the Home Rule Act. Its mission is to support the Council of the District of Columbia by making sound recommendations that improve the effectiveness, efficiency, and accountability of the district government. Pursuant to the Home Rule Act, the auditor is appointed by the chairman of the council, subject to the approval of the majority of the council. And as I noted, the term is for 6 years. The resolution would confirm the reappointment of Ms. Patterson. This would be her 3rd appointment as auditor. She is currently a resident of Ward 3, has resided in the district for over 45 years, has a Bachelor of Science in Journalism from Northwestern University, a Master of Arts in English Literature from Georgetown University. Ms. Patterson was a member of the council, first elected in 1994, served for 12 years. And I could say more, but it's in the report. The resolution was introduced by me on January 3rd of this year. The Committee of the Whole had a public hearing on January 30th. The Committee of the Whole has received no testimony or comments in opposition to the reappointment of Ms. Patterson. I believe members are familiar with the work of the Office of the District of Columbia Auditor. And so I move the print. If there's no objection, I'll move both the print and the report together with leave for staff to make technical conforming and editorial changes. Is there discussion? Councilmember Bonds.
Thank you very much. I just have a question about the length of the appointment, 6 years. Just curious as to how our government arrived at that being the length of service in this position.
I think you're going to have to ask Congress. And I think you're going to have to ask a lot of congressmen who were there in 1973 and might not still be there. I'm guessing that the theory was that they wanted an independent office that is an adjunct to the council that outlasts, in terms of the term, the terms of current members of the council. So though every one of us who's here today, we would have to go through a reelection to be here 6 years from now, but Ms. Patterson would be the auditor for the full 6 years.
Well, thank you very much. I think it was just important for the public to know that this is not a mandate set by the council, that is set by Congress, so that we all understand that we continue to have imposition on our government by the United States Congress. So thank you very much.
Sure. I'm guessing that, well, I'm not guessing this. The auditor is somewhat analogous to the General Accountability Office. And the head of the General Accountability Office, what's the title? The Controller General has served a term of, I believe, 15 years. I'm not proposing that.
No, because you indicated this is a mandate from Congress, so they would have to
Correct.
impose that. Well, thank you very much. I just wanted the public to understand what this is about. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, can I add?
Yes, Councilmember Fruman.
Regardless of where the requirement comes from for the time period, I think we're very lucky to have Kathy Patterson in this role for another 6 years. I think she's done just a great job so far, and I look forward to her next 6 years.
Thank you. Councilmember Robert White, did you want to be recognized?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to add my voice of support. I think the level of thoroughness and professionalism from Auditor Patterson is exceptional. I think she adds incredible value to our body and to our city. And even where we disagree, I appreciate her voice and her work. So I look forward to supporting her continued work in that position.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Councilmember Parker.
I would echo what my colleagues has already said, and just offering appreciation to Ms. Patterson for her work and the professionalism of her office. I would also just encourage the district and residents to take heed to many of the reports that the office is putting out, and us as a body to take action on many of the recommendations coming from the auditor's office. So looking forward to supporting this nomination.
If there's nothing further, we will have a roll call. The vote is on both the print and report with lead for staff. Mr. Cash, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Bonds.
Yes.
Councilmember Bonds votes yes. Councilmember Fruman.
Yes.
Councilmember Fruman votes yes. Councilmember Gray.
yes,
Councilmember Gray votes yes. Councilmember Henderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson votes yes. Councilmember Lewis George.
Yes.
Councilmember Lewis George votes yes. Councilmember McDuffie.
Yes.
Councilmember McDuffie votes yes. Chairman Mendelson.
Yes.
Chairman Mendelson votes yes. Councilmember Nadeau.
Yes.
Councilmember Nadeau votes yes. Councilmember Parker.
Yes.
Councilmember Parker votes yes. Councilmember Pinto.
Yes.
Councilmember Pinto votes yes. Councilmember Robert White.
Yes.
Councilmember Robert White votes yes. Councilmember Trahan White.
yes,
Councilmember Trahan White votes yes. Councilmember Allen. Yes. Councilmember Allen votes yes. Mr. Chairman, there are 13 yeses.
Thank you, Mr. Cash. The motion, which is the print report, are approved unanimously. Madam General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, it is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete?
Once the hearing record and report are filed.
Madam Budget Director, does the measure's fiscal impact statement comply with council requirements?
Yes, it does.
Without objection, this measure will be placed on the consent agenda for today's legislative meeting. The next item for business is PR 25-48, the Pennsylvania Avenue East Small Area Plan Approval Resolution of 2023. The purpose of this resolution is to approve the proposed Pennsylvania Avenue East Small Area Plan, which was prepared by the DC Office of Planning in furtherance of the comprehensive plan. This measure was submitted to the council on November 28th, 2022. It would be deemed approved later this month. The Committee of the Whole held a hearing on this resolution on the small area plan on January 30th, 2023. As I said, it was originally introduced last November, which some members will recall was at the end of November. It was a very busy time. So the committee of the whole did not have the ability to take it up in the last several weeks of the council period. The Pennsylvania Avenue East Study Area is located in Ward 7. It is comprised of the 1.5 mile long, half-mile wide corridor centered on Pennsylvania Avenue Southeast, running between the Sousa Bridge and Southern Avenue. The Pennsylvania Avenue East Small Area Plan is organized along 4 themes: economic development and retail opportunity, transportation access and connectivity, housing opportunities and affordability, and vibrant public realm and urban design. For the Pennsylvania Avenue East Small Area Plan, the planning process coordinated by the Office of Planning included substantial public engagement beginning in April 2021. From that time until July 2022, a number of virtual community meetings were held to engage the public, with additional in-person meeting opportunities convened to develop the plan. In all, the planning process included 25 community events led by the Office of Planning and a series of online engagements. The draft plan was released for public comment on September 1st, 2022. There was a mayoral public hearing on October 1st, 2022. The small area plan does include an implementation chapter outlining how the plan will be implemented through private development and public investment. And this would be led by government agencies, property owners, and community partners over years and decades. The this small area plan is the 3rd small area plan completed since adoption of the Comprehensive Plan Amendment Act of 2021. The new requirement of the comprehensive plan is planning through a racial equity lens. To that end, the Pennsylvania Avenue East Small Area Plan includes a section entitled Equity in Place that describes how the plan was developed through such a lens. This small area plan is only an early step to envision changes to Pennsylvania Avenue East. That meaning the small area plan will be followed by a number of zoning commission and other planning processes that will provide additional input from the public. This plan starts that process. As I indicated, this was introduced at the request of the mayor on November 28th, 2022. The committee of the whole held a hearing on January 30th of this year. There was testimony from about a half dozen witnesses. If I remember correctly, one witness testified in opposition and the others were supportive. Generally, the comments that the committees received have been supportive of the small area plan. Without objection, I'll move both the print and the report with leave for staff to make technical conforming editorial changes. Is there a discussion? The vote will be on both the print and report with leave for staff. Mr. Cash, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Fruman.
Yes.
Councilmember Fruman votes yes. Councilmember Gray.
Yes.
Councilmember Gray votes yes. Councilmember Henderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson votes yes. Councilmember Lewis George.
Yes.
Councilmember Lewis George votes yes. Councilmember McDuffie.
Yes.
Councilmember McDuffie votes yes. Chairman Mendelson.
Yes.
Chairman Mendelson votes yes. Councilmember Nadeau.
Yes.
Councilmember Nadeau votes yes. Councilmember Parker.
Yes.
Councilmember Parker votes yes. Councilmember Pinto.
Yes.
Councilmember Pinto votes yes. Councilmember Robert White.
Yes.
Councilmember Robert White votes yes. Councilmember Trahan White.
Yes.
Councilmember Trahan White votes yes. Councilmember Allen.
Yes.
Councilmember Allen votes yes. Councilmember Bonds.
Yes.
Councilmember Bonds votes yes. Mr. Chairman, there are 13 yeses.
Thank you, Mr. Cash. The print report are approved unanimously. Madam General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, it is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete?
Once the hearing record and committee report are filed.
Madam Budget Director, does the measure's fiscal impact statement comply with council requirements?
Yes, it does.
Without objection, this measure will be placed on the consent agenda for today's legislative meeting. The third and final measure for markup in the committee of the whole is Bill 25-20, closing of a portion of Half Street Southwest adjacent to Square 660 Act of 2023. This bill would close an 889 square foot portion of Half Street Southwest adjacent to Lot 12 and Square 660 between Potomac Avenue Southwest and R Street Southwest. The portion of Half Street that will be closed pursuant to this bill is currently unimproved and was recently used as a construction staging area by the District Department of Transportation for the Frederick Douglass Memorial Bridge and South Capitol Street Corridor projects. The applicant for this closure does not yet have plans to develop the site, but is in the process of master planning to determine the most appropriate use for the property. The right-of-way affected by this bill is landlocked between the inside edge of the sidewalks on Half Street and the property in Lot 12. As I noted, the applicant does not have plans to develop the site, as in doesn't have the plans finalized for developing the site, but is in the process of master planning to determine the most appropriate use and design for the property. The applicant also owns Square 662, which is bounded by Half Street, R Street, S Street, all in Southwest, which will be the site of a multi-phase mixed-use development. The sliver of Half Street to be closed was dedicated for highway purposes in 1935 as part of a plan to extend the district's rail lines to Buzzard Point. I will say the committee of the whole staff was unable to actually find this section of the right-of-way in the highway plan itself. Highway plan, which hasn't been updated for 5 years. Reading from the report and assuming this is approved, the committee finds that the portion of Half Street as depicted on the attached surveyor's plat is unnecessary for street purposes. The closure will allow the owner of the land in Square 660 to develop a plan for the appropriate development of the property. Accordingly, the committee recommends approval of the committee print. This bill 25-20 was previously introduced on September 28th, 2022 as Bill 24-1026. The committee of the whole held a public hearing on that bill 24-1026 on December 12th, 2022. This bill as 25-20 was reintroduced by Councilmember Allen on January 11th, 2023. Since the bill is identical to the last council period on which the hearing was held, roughly 2 months ago, we are relying on the hearing record from December 12th, 2022. As I recall, the committee received no testimony or comments in opposition to the bill. There's no objection, I'll move both the print and report with leave for staff to make technical conforming and editorial changes. Is there discussion? Vote will be on both the print and report with leave for staff. Mr. Cash, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Gray.
Yes.
Councilmember Gray votes yes. Councilmember Henderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson votes yes. Councilmember Louis George.
Yes.
Councilmember Louis George votes yes. Councilmember McDuffie.
Yes.
Councilmember McDuffie votes yes. Chairman Mendelsohn.
Yes.
Chairman Mendelsohn votes yes. Councilmember Nadeau.
Yes.
Councilmember Nadeau votes yes. Councilmember Parker.
Yes.
Councilmember Parker votes yes. Councilmember Pinto.
Yes.
Councilmember Pinto votes yes. Councilmember Robert White.
Yes.
Councilmember Robert White votes yes. Councilmember Trahan White.
Yes.
Councilmember Trahan White votes yes. Councilmember Allen.
Yes.
Councilmember Allen votes yes. Councilmember Bonds.
Yes.
Councilmember Bonds votes yes. Councilmember Fruman.
Yes.
Councilmember Fruman votes yes. Mr. Chairman, there are 13 yeses.
Thank you, Mr. Cash. The motion, which is both the print and report, are approved unanimously. Madam General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, it is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete?
Once the report is filed,
Madam Budget Director, does the measure's fiscal impact statement comply with council requirements?
Yes, it does.
Without objection, this measure will be placed on the consent agenda for today's legislative meeting. We'll turn now to consideration of measures from other committees. As a reminder to members, questions may be asked but not debate. If there's no objection, we'll take the first 3 items in block. Each of them is a nomination to the Board of Veterinary Medicine, and all 3 were reported out of the Committee on Health. PR 25-41, Board of Veterinary Medicine, Daniel Teach, confirmation resolution of 2022. PR 25-42, Board of Veterinary Medicine, Sophie Stenner, confirmation resolution of 2022. And PR 25-43, Board of Veterinary Medicine, Amy Haywood, confirmation resolution of 2022. These three were reported out of the Committee on Health, chaired by Councilmember Christina Henderson. Councilmember Henderson, would you present the measures?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The proposed measures would appoint 3 members to the Board of Veterinary Medicine, which regulates the practices of veterinarians, veterinary techs, and veterinary euthanasia techs in the District of Columbia, and advises the mayor with respect to regulations for veterinary facilities. PR 25-41 would confirm the reappointment of Dr. Daniel Teach for his 3rd term as a licensed veterinary member of the board. He has served as the chairperson of the board for the past 2 years. Dr. Teach has been practicing veterinary medicine in the district the past 19 years and is currently the owner and medical director of the District Veterinary Hospital. He received his Bachelor of Science in Animal Science and a doctorate in veterinary medicine from Ohio State University. He is a resident of the district, currently living in Ward 6. PR 25-42 would confirm Dr. Sophie Stinner as the licensed veterinary member of the board for her first 3-year term. She's currently an associate veterinarian at Union Veterinary Clinic in the district. Dr. Stinner received her Bachelor of Veterinary Medicine from the University of London, has a small animal surgical certificate from the British Small Animal Veterinary Association. She's also a resident of Ward 6. PR 25-43 would confirm Amy Haywood's reappointment for her 3rd term as a veterinary tech member of the Board of Veterinary Medicine. She's currently a licensed veterinary tech and consultant for the American Animal Hospital Association. She received her associate in science degree in veterinary technology from Purdue University, and she is also a resident of Ward 6. Yes, all 3 are residents of Ward 6. The proposed resolutions were introduced on December 7th, 2022 by you, Mr. Chairman, at the request of the mayor, and referred to the Committee on Health on December 20th, 2022. The council did not take up these resolutions in council period 24, so they were reintroduced on January 6th. And without council action, these resolutions would be deemed approved on February 12th. Given the tight timeline, the committee did not hold a public roundtable on the nominees, but instead requested written responses from all the nominees to a vetting questionnaire that covered any potential conflicts of interest, as well as a written statement on the qualifications and interest to serve on the board. All of those documents are attached to the respective committee reports. The committee marked up these resolutions unanimously on January 30th, 2023. And with that, I move these resolutions and ask that they be placed on the consent agenda for today's legislative meeting.
Thank you, Councilmember Henderson. Are there questions from members? Madam General Counsel, are these 3 measures legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, they are.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete for each?
Yes.
Madam Budget Director, do the measures' fiscal impact statements comply with council requirements?
Yes, they do.
Without objection, these measures will be placed on the consent agenda for today's legislative meeting. The final item for consideration is PR 25-19, Director of the Office of Cable Television, Film, Media, and Entertainment, Latoya Foster, confirmation resolution of 2022. This measure was reported out of the Committee on Recreation, Libraries, and Youth Affairs, chaired by Councilmember Trayon White Sr. Councilmember White.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman referred PR 25-0019, Director of Office of Cable Television, Film, Media, Entertainment, Latoya Foster, confirmation resolution of 2022. The Committee on Recreation, Library, and Youth Affairs held a hearing on November the 5th, to the committee on November the 15th, 2022. The committee held a public roundtable on the resolution November 21st, 2022. The record for the roundtable closed on November the 28th, 2022, and the committee filed for the record for the roundtable with the Office of the Secretary. For 7 years, Ms. Foster has served as Deputy Communications for Director of Office of Mayor Muriel Bowser. In this position, she served as the Chief Spokesperson for Mayor Bowser while developing and managing the daily operations and comprehensive communication strategies for the Executive Office and more than 100 government agencies and departments. Prior to this position, Foster served as Communications Director for the Office of the Honorable Mayor Marion Barry Jr. for 2 years. She oversaw the communication strategies and operations for this office while gathering the background information for Barry's memoir, The Incredible Life of Marion Barry. For 5 years prior, Foster worked as executive producer for In the Know, for WJLA ABC 7 and News Channel 8. And This Is Your Moment for the World Network TV, the largest Christian broadcasting network in the world. In this role, she served as an on-air personality for weekly public affairs programming, interviewing national and international politicians and business leaders, entertainers, and professional athletes. She identified, developed, and researched weekly topics based on current events, served as media contact and spokesperson for the program, and managed the program's website and social media efforts. On January 31st, 2023, the Committee on Recreation, Library, and Youth Affairs held a committee meeting which considered a vote on PR 25-0019, the Director of Office of Cables of Television, Film, Media, and Entertainment, Latoya Foster, Confirmation Resolution of 2023. I recognize the presence of a quorum consisting of council members McDuffie, Nadeau, and Bonds. The resolution passed unanimously, and it was approved and was timely filed with the Secretary's office on February 1st, 2023. Due to Ms. Foster's personal and professional experience, which demonstrates both her leadership and experience, in accordance with the requirements of the position, the committee recommend that the council confirms her nomination. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember White. Are there questions from members? Madam General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, it is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete?
Yes, it is.
Madam Budget Director, does the measure's fiscal impact statement comply with council requirements?
Yes, it does.
Without objection, this measure will be placed on the consent agenda for today's legislative meeting. That concludes the business for this committee of the whole meeting. We will take a couple minutes. How much time is needed? 2 minutes. We will take a couple minutes and then start the legislative meeting. The time is 12:16 and this meeting's adjourned. I'm calling to order this meeting. This is a meeting of the Council of the District of Columbia. This is a regular meeting of the council. This is the third legislative meeting of the council in council period 25. I'm Phil Mendelson, chairman of the council. Today is Tuesday, February 7th, 2023. The time is 12:25 in the afternoon. And this meeting is being conducted both in person and virtually, or what we call a hybrid meeting. Most of the members are present in room 500, the council chambers of the Johnny Wilson Building. But there's at least one member participating virtually via Zoom video conference broadcast platform. And this meeting is being broadcast live on Council Channel 13 and is available on the council's website, www.dccouncil.gov. We always begin our legislative meetings with a moment of silence, a opportunity for reflection. If everyone in the chamber can please observe a moment of silence. Madam Secretary, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Allen,
Here.
Councilmember Bonds,
Here.
Councilmember Freeman,
Present.
Councilmember Gray,
Here.
Councilmember Henderson,
Here.
Councilmember Lewis George,
Here.
Councilmember McDuffie,
Here.
Chairman Mendelson,
Present.
Councilmember Nadeau,
Here.
Councilmember Parker,
Here.
Councilmember Pinto,
Present.
Councilmember Robert White,
Present.
Councilmember Trahan White.
Present.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. We have the Secretary's report of committee reports and special reports. I'm going to recognize the Chair Pro Tem, Councilmember McDuffie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll move to waive the reading of the Secretary's report.
Is there a motion to waive the reading of the report? Is there discussion? By a voice vote, all those in favor of the motion to waive the reading, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. We have the Secretary's report of introductions. Again, I'll recognize the Chair Pro Tem, Mr. McDuffie.
And I will move to waive the reading of the Secretary's report of introductions.
Is there a motion to waive the reading of the report? Is there discussion? All those in favor of the motion to waive the reading, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Are there any opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. We have the consent agenda before us. Are there any changes to the consent agenda? Councilmember Robert White.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to remove item
G1 on page 5.
G1 on page 5. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Bill 25-12, the continuity and condominium warranty claims temporary amendment act.
That is it.
Do you want me to explain why?
Please do.
No, I can't. All right, that's been removed from the consent agenda. Are there any other changes to the consent agenda? We have the consent agenda with the one change before us. The vote will be a roll call vote on the consent agenda, Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Robert White,
Yes.
Councilmember Robert White votes yes. Councilmember Trahan White,
Yes.
Councilmember Trahan White votes yes. Councilmember Allen,
Yes.
Councilmember Allen votes yes. Councilmember Bonds,
Yes.
Councilmember Bonds votes yes. Councilmember Freeman,
Yes.
Councilmember Freeman votes yes. Councilmember Gray,
Yes.
Councilmember Gray votes yes. Councilmember Henderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson votes yes. Councilmember Lewis George,
Yes.
Councilmember Lewis George votes yes. Councilmember McDuffie,
Yes.
Councilmember McDuffie votes yes. Chairman Mendelson,
Yes.
Chairman Mendelson votes yes. Councilmember Nadeau,
Yes.
Councilmember Nadeau votes yes. Councilmember Parker,
Yes.
Councilmember Parker votes yes. Councilmember Pinto,
Yes.
Councilmember Pinto votes yes. Mr. Chairman, there are 13 yeses.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. The consent agenda is approved unanimously. We will turn to, on page 5, item G1, Bill 25-12, Continuity and Condominium Warranty Claims Temporary Amendment Act of 2023. Councilmember Robert White.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last month, we passed emergency technical legislation to prevent an inadvertent temporary lapse in some provisions that were included in the final version of the Condominium Warranty Claims for Clarification Amendment Act of 2022. We also unanimously approved a temporary version of the temporary bill, but I have since been advised that the temporary version before us is no longer needed. I therefore move to postpone consideration of Bill 25-12 indefinitely pursuant to Rule 352. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. White. So there's a motion before us to postpone indefinitely Bill 25-12. I think we can dispense with this by a voice vote, but first I'll ask if there's discussion. By a voice vote on the motion to postpone indefinitely, all in favor say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. We will turn to the non-consent agenda. It is page 11, and the first item is, we have two proposed resolutions. The first is PR 25-63. Compensation and Working Conditions Agreement between the District of Columbia Public Schools and the Washington Teachers Union, Local Number 6 of the American Federation of Teachers Approval Resolution of 2023. Councilmember Bonds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. PR 25-63, the Compensation and Working Conditions Agreement between the District of Columbia Public Schools and the Washington Teachers Union, Local 6 of the American Federation of Teachers Approval Resolution of 23 will approve a collective bargaining agreement between DC Public Schools and the Washington Teachers Union, which began in effect from October 1, 2019 through September 30th, 2023. The agreement will cover more than 5,500 teachers, social workers, therapists, coaches, and other school personnel. Last week, we heard from representatives from the two parties. We heard from the Washington Teachers Union President Line, as well as a representative from the government, the city administrator, Kevin Donahue, and of course, the director of the Office of Labor Relations and Collective Bargaining, Lindsay Maxwell. The parties agreed that this is an important contract and a necessary contract that is the result of extensive negotiations and compromise between the teachers union and the district government. It is important to note that this agreement covers the time during which we were in the throes of COVID-19 pandemic from April 2020 through August 2021. For that reason, the contract provides retroactive raises for all of the Washington Teachers Union members during that period. Our schools and teachers were faced with immense challenges during that period, and some of the challenges persist even today. Consequently, it also provides retention bonuses for all of the teachers union members, additional bonuses for hard to fill positions, and stipends for employees with specialized duties, such as case managers. This will allow the district to remain competitive in our efforts to attract and retain high-quality instructors. I'm proud that the terms of this agreement ensure that our teachers remain amongst the highest paid teachers in the nation. This is a strong contract that reflects a commitment to recognizing the hard work and dedication of our teachers through the public and throughout the public health crisis. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember Bonds. Before I ask for discussion, I just received a email which has the payment schedule. I don't know if you've seen that yet, Councilmember Bonds. And this had been asked at the breakfast. So reading just a portion of this, this is a memo from Lindsay Maxwell, who is the director of the Office of Labor Relations and Collective Bargaining, and the memo was sent through Kevin Donahue, the city administrator. We anticipate paying the WTU CBA's FY 2023 cost of living adjustment and 4% retention bonus on March 24th. Because retroactive pay for FY 2021 and 22 requires funding through a supplemental budget submission that the council will vote on in May and will require additional quality control by the Office of the Chief Technology Officer, the Office of the Chief Financial Officer, and the DC Human Resources and DCPS. We anticipate the payment, this again would be for the retroactive pay, to be made May 19th. I don't know if that includes all the payments, but those would be the major ones. Councilmember Bonds?
Thank you, very much, Chairman, and I'm glad you received that because as chair of the committee, I have not received it. But I'm always happy to know that we have finally gotten the information that we asked for.
Well, actually, I think it was an email that was just sent, and I think it was sent to you and not to me.
Oh, well, okay, well, it's not showing up here, that's all I can say, but it may be, it's probably in the office, no problem there. I am just delighted that we finally have some determination for our teachers. They have been very concerned about what would be the first payout date. And so we finally have that information. So thank you very much for that. And we look forward to understanding the full schedule of the payouts as our teachers are very anxious. Again, this is a contract that covers a period of 2019 through 2023. So thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you. Discussion from members? Councilmember Louis George.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to take note to thank the Washington Teachers Union President Jackie Pope Lyons and her entire WTU executive team for working together to get our teachers paid. This contract, which provides a retroactive pay increase for our teachers who worked through the pandemic without a new contract. This is for our teachers. This is for our teachers who taught themselves how to lead a class on Zoom and keep our kids learning while we all maintain social distancing. As we asked our teachers to return to the classroom, some before they were able to get vaccinated, we were asking them to serve our kids above themselves, and they rose to that challenge. I'm extremely proud of the work our teachers did and are still doing to get our kids back on track. And we need them, and we need to do this today to help compensate them for their earned wages. They deserve this, and I'm grateful to get to vote yes on this today. I also can't help but to thank a former president, Washington Teachers Union President Liz Davis today, a fierce advocate for our educators. I am sorry that Liz passed before she could see this day. I know she would have fought hard at the negotiating table to get everything she could for her members. I monitored the hearing last week, and it is clear we need the union and DCPS to get right back to the table to make sure we don't have another prolonged period of retroactive pay again. We've got too many problems as it is with teacher retention, either by impact or just really tough working conditions. And so we shouldn't delay paying our teachers, and we can't do this again in a few years. So thank you, Chairman, and I look forward to this continued work.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember McDuffie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too want to add my voice of thanks that this is finally done, and I look forward to supporting it today. I think it's important to recognize how invaluable our educators are to a quality public school system, and frankly, how much they've had to endure over these last few years, which is much more than normal. Teachers already have one of the most challenging jobs in our city government, and really have went above and beyond over the course of the pandemic to make sure that they were providing our children with the highest level of care, which I think is paramount to making sure that our education system functions. I think we also have to recognize that this really, I think some of the things we've heard or read make it seem like it's all about money. And while that's vitally important, I think it really sends a signal about how we value our educators and the sacrifices that they've made for our students over the last several years. I think the retroactive pay is vital. I think the retention bonuses are important. I think you just mentioned the payment schedule, which I know is something that's been coming up as well, Mr. Chairman, and that Councilmember Bonds has been working on. I think they're all significant as well. I mean, the stipends for those with specialized duties is incredibly important as well. And so it shouldn't have taken this long, but I'm glad that we're finally here today and that I can support this contract. I want to also recognize, as Councilmember Lewis George did, the leadership of Jackie Pope Lyons and her executive team for all their hard work and advocacy to get us to this point today. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember McDuffie. Councilmember Tran White.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm excited that we have come to the day where we are rewarding our frontline workers, that's our teachers who sacrifice day in and day out to educate our beautiful minds here in the district. I know I've been to some of the rallies they've been having throughout the district early in the morning before they go to work. And I spend a lot of time in the schools, and I know that being a teacher in 2023 is not easy, especially those months and years during the pandemic. I've spoken to a lot of teachers who expressed that they didn't have enough resources to accomplish the tasks that were set before them. But nonetheless, they endured those challenges, pick up the mantle and kept going. We've seen just teachers leaving the district in astronomical numbers, but those who have remained to stay and endure, we want to reward them economically. There's an old scripture that says, where your heart is, that your treasure will be also. So it's time to reward them with retroactive pay and also cost of living adjustment. I think they are just due. I want to thank the President Jacqueline Pope Lyons for her leadership. She's been persistent. She's been vigilant about what the teachers want, and we have to give it to them, as the district has surpluses every year since I've been here for 6 years. It's incumbent upon us to do our due diligence and work with the mayor to see them get their just due. I also want to give a special shout out to Liz Davis, who was a fierce leader on the front line for decades, fighting for equity and justice for residents in DC, more particularly our teachers in the Washington Teachers Union. It's been a journey, and I'm glad we're able to share this moment with them. And sometimes money is just not enough, and I'm just glad we're able to do that part today. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember White. Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to associate my comments with all of my colleagues who have gone before me. I am happy that this agreement was finally reached after 3 years. But I also think it's important for us to state, and it shouldn't be lost on anyone, that this contract also expires in September. And so that's only 7 months from now. And so I hope that the union, as well as, the executive and DCPS, are already back at the table so that we don't go another 3 years of our teachers and leaders also having to work without a contract. I should also mention that I think that there are probably some other things we should do within our labor laws to clean some things up. For instance, all of the staff who left or retired in the 3 years that it has taken for us to get this contract do not benefit from this. And I think we should think about that. And so I'll just end by saying, I hope that DCPS and the WTU are already getting to work so that we could avoid this type of thing happening again. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Henderson. Councilmember Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 3 years. So 3 years ago, we were just starting to realize that there was a new virus about to change our entire lives. And at that point, of course, none of us knew exactly where we were going to go, but our teachers have been on the front lines for every day of those last 3 years. I am very glad that we are taking this action today. And as my colleagues have also noted, I think it will be unacceptable if there is not another deal figured out by the time this contract expires in 7 months. As a DCPS parent, I talk with the teachers all the time in my kids' own school and schools around Ward 6. They are utterly exhausted. They have been on the front lines of an incredible amount. They are dealing with students who are in crisis and have accumulated 3 years worth of trauma. So this is absolutely an important and right step to take. I am very glad and grateful for President Lyons and for everyone at WTU for helping fight to get this done. We've got to make sure that we don't have another gap in years, because if we want to keep our teachers and educators, if we want to recruit educators into this space, we've got to show them that we've got their back and that we will value them. And that is crucial to the success of our, not just our schools, but our entire city. So I'm very grateful this is moving forward. Thank you to everybody who's helped have a hand in this. And let's make sure that we do not allow another 3 years to pass, because we are just going to wipe out our teachers if we do not act more quickly to get the next contract in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Allen. Councilmember Robert White.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to add a note of support and gratitude that we are here at the finish line for this overdue contract with teachers. When the pandemic started, I had one DCPS student and now I have two. And so I have had a bird's eye view for the past 3 years of what teachers have been managing teaching during this time, also recognizing that, like me and the rest of us, they have a lot going on in the rest of their lives. I've been grateful for the teachers that my daughters have had, probably more grateful that I'm not a teacher, because it is very, very difficult work. I want to congratulate President Jacqueline Pope Lyons and her team and teachers for the work they've done to get us here, and the administration for their work to get us here. I also want to recognize that this is about more than money. We have one of the worst teacher retention rates in the country. And we have to recognize how important it is. If we want a stable school system, if we want to keep residents and families in this system, then we have got to be able to retain teachers. And so we need not show in another 3 years that we don't value teachers enough, or that we're not going to go to bat for teachers. We have to be looking at issues like the size of classes, the amount of sick leave, funding for social emotional learning and mental health supports, full-time librarians in schools. We have to recognize the things other than money. And my hope is that when we start negotiating the next contract, one, it won't take this long, and two, that it is not such an uphill battle. So celebrating being at the finish line today, but also recognizing that we are at the starting blocks for the next contract. And my hope is that the next contract continues to reflect how much we appreciate our teachers here in the District of Columbia. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman,
I have a lineup. Councilmember.
Oh, you do?
Bonds.
All
Yes, I do.
go right ahead.
Yes, the more people talk, the more other people want to. So it's not clear to me whether this is going to be approved, but so I want to hear from everyone. Councilmember Fruman, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think many of us want to be heard from because we're so grateful to be at this day. It was such an enormous amount of work for the WTU to get to where we are. Many of us were at those protests early in the morning, in the afternoon, and watched the WTU and tried to support them along the way as they sought this contract. I'm going to reiterate that a big thing is the money, but there is much more than the money. A couple of the things that are included here, including at least 2 morning blocks of planning per week, which is essential for teacher development and work management. That kind of thing goes to the kinds of things that Councilmember White was just speaking to. We need to change the culture inside of our schools. We need to give oxygen to our teachers so that they have the time to get stronger and to replenish their energy so they can fully serve our children. They've been sorely taxed over recent years. Where we are is we have some of the worst teacher retention in the country. If we're going to have a successful school system, if we're going to have a successful city, we need to change that. That's going to be about a lot of things. Again, the kinds of things that Councilmember White spoke to also, and others have spoken to, also a lot of dissatisfaction with the evaluation system, which contributes to low teacher morale. I think these are things that we need to be thinking about. Here we are after a long negotiation period and about to start the next one, it is absolutely imperative that this next contract not drag out in the way that this last one has, that we need to treat this as a start. It's a great step, this contract, but we can do better than this. And we all need to put our shoulders down to make sure that our schools succeed. I certainly intend to be doing that in the months to come. And I hope my colleagues will join me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today is a long time coming. And with this vote and updated contract, we are affirming the importance of our educators who worked tirelessly through the pandemic. I want to acknowledge the hard work of the team at DC Public Schools, as well as the Washington Teachers Union, and also acknowledge, as my colleagues have already called attention to, that this contract expires this year. And so it's going to be important that we begin discussions now so that we're not at the same place years from now. There's also a need for parity for those educators that have left the system that are not included in this contract. And I want to extend an invitation to Councilmember Bonds and you, Mr. Chairman, to figure out a solution to include them in future legislation. There's also a call from charter educators for a similar investment in them. And I'm committed to working with you all to get that done. What we cannot afford to do, though, is simply write a blank check to our charter LEAs. And so any investment that we make for our charter sector, which I believe is important to do, we should make sure it indeed goes to our educators who too have worked tirelessly since the pandemic. But I want to just conclude by thanking our educators, and I look forward to voting for this legislation.
Thank you, Councilmember Parker. Councilmember Pinto.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to add my thanks to everybody who's worked so hard on this contract for many, many years, and really appreciate all of the comments of our colleagues today about what's gone into this, our respect and gratitude to our educators, and also the importance of not having folks dust their hands off and think the work is finished after the vote today. It is really important for stability and respect and consistency for our current educators and our educators who are and will be retiring, that there is standardization to these processes and that people aren't waiting years and years. I'll just finish by saying I am continually very concerned by how many teachers I speak to who tell me that they are paying for things their students need out of their own pocket, for supplies, for books. Sometimes it's a licensing issue, sometimes it's an approval issue, sometimes it's a funding issue. But that is not a tenable or acceptable place for us to be in our city, that educators are reaching into their own pockets to support our kids. And so in addition to supporting this contract, I hope we can all continue to work for adequate funding for all of our schools so that this isn't coming from our teachers' pockets. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Pinto. Councilmember Bond, second round.
Thank you. I just wanted to add to this discussion the fact that we are all very supportive of this sort of baseline contract. It was made very clear during the hearing that there are other components that we need to wrestle with, or that the teachers union and the administration will be wrestling with. And I hope that we get some of those items resolved, such as what my colleagues have mentioned here today. But I think the bottom line is that we all have said loud and clear that we are looking forward to a new contract that can be decided within a few months as opposed to a few years, as it took this particular contract. And I'm hoping that teachers union and the negotiators for the government are hearing us loud and clear and understand that taking 3 years to implement a contract that will be expiring this year, almost like the moment in which you have decided on it, is unconscionable. And it does cause hardship. Perhaps there are those that are not included in this contract that would have been included in it if the contract had taken place some time ago. But, you know, that's what happens with contracts. And here we are today. So I'm hoping that we will have a sense of urgency in getting a new contract together. It is imperative. And I'm hoping that not only will we wrestle with class size, which I understand now is 25 is the high end, but we also will wrestle with retention of our teachers. We must do that. So thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember Bonds. I want to comment on a couple of things. First, Councilmember Bonds, thank you for the hearing last week. And having the hearing was, in my view, important because it allowed discussion of a number of critical issues, one of which was whether there would be payment, roughly equal payment to the charter sector. And while the executive didn't commit, they said that was, they seemed to convey that was in the works and that it would be included in the mayor's proposed budget that we receive next month. There was discussion, quite a bit of discussion about the payment schedule. And as I noted a few minutes ago, we did receive a memo from the Office of Labor Relations Collective Bargaining with the schedule that was also sent to the union. And I think that's important because there's been misunderstanding with other contracts about when folks would actually get paid. And then there also was discussion at the hearing about the next contract, as a number of members have said here today on the dais, that, and I remember I particularly pushed the executive that the executive has the ability to initiate bargaining. The executive was quite clear, the Office of Labor Relations Collective Bargaining was quite clear that they were waiting for the union to start negotiations. And so I think the message was conveyed that we don't want to see this one take another, even a year. We want to see the next contract much, much sooner. If there's no further discussion, the vote will be on PR 25-63. And there appears to be further discussion. Mr. Fruman, 2 minutes.
Just briefly, I'm not sure that I heard the same thing that you heard about some sort of certainty about the way you described it, an equal payment to the charter sector. I thought that what the executive said was that they were looking at that issue, and it's really a question of if there is a payment to the charter sector, on what sort of terms should that payment be made? Many people have said it would be imperative that that money go directly to the teachers. You can't just take the things you want to out of a collective bargaining agreement and ignore all of the other things. If the charter sector is to benefit from this, there's got to be some kind of guidelines about how that would work. And I think we should all be thinking about that. I also want to associate myself with the comments about the teachers, the DCPS teachers who left while the contract was being negotiated. I do think we should be looking at ways to try to help those teachers. But I think there's a lot of work to be done actually on the implementation of this and for the things that may fall outside of the strict terms of the contract. And we should be careful to be fair and also careful with the taxpayers' dollars. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's no further discussion, the vote will be on PR 25-63. Madam Secretary, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Trayon White.
Yes.
Councilmember Trayon White votes yes. Councilmember Allen.
Yes.
Councilmember Allen votes yes. Councilmember Bonds.
Yes.
Councilmember Bonds votes yes. Councilmember Freeman.
Yes.
Councilmember Freeman votes yes. Councilmember Gray.
Yes.
Councilmember Gray votes yes. Councilmember Henderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson votes yes. Councilmember Lewis George.
Yes.
Councilmember Lewis George votes yes. Councilmember McDuffie.
Yes.
Councilmember McDuffie votes yes. Chairman Mendelson.
Yes.
Chairman Mendelson votes yes. Councilmember Nadeau.
Yes.
Councilmember Nadeau votes yes. Councilmember Parker.
Yes.
Councilmember Parker votes yes. Councilmember Pinto.
Yes.
Councilmember Pinto votes yes. Councilmember Robert White.
Yes.
Councilmember Robert White votes yes. Mr. Chairman, there are 13 yeses.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. The resolution and the contract are approved unanimously. The next item is PR 25-15, Director of the Office of Human Rights, Nin Kang, Confirmation Resolution of 2023. Councilmember Nadeau.
Thank you, Chairman. Today I am moving PR 25-015, the Director of the Office of Human Rights, Nin Kang Confirmation Resolution of 2023. This resolution was originally introduced in the last council period and referred to the Committee on Government Operations and Facilities. Councilmember Robert White held a roundtable on the measure on December 15th of last year, and it was reintroduced and referred to our new Committee on Public Works and Operations. The resolution would be deemed approved tomorrow, February 8th. However, given the critical mission of the Office of Human Rights and this being a pivotal time of growth and change for the office, I felt it was appropriate to give this nomination a proper vote of the full council. That was why I requested the chairman re-refer it out of our committee so that we could agendize it for today. Nin Kang was appointed as interim director of the Office of Human Rights at a time when the agency was experiencing instability. In that time, she has stewarded a 40% growth in the office's staff size and taken significant measure to reduce the office's caseload backlog. Since then, the agency has been able to double its case processing rates and reduce the number of pending cases. Council has asked a lot of the Office of Human Rights, which is now tasked with implementing as many as 5 recently passed laws, continuing to grow staff, and moving into a new consolidated office space. I believe Nin Kang has the necessary skills to continue her leadership of the office in this critical period of its history. She has proven herself capable and qualified for the director position because of her previous experience as a human rights attorney and her existing understanding of the function of the Office of Human Rights and its mission. Thank you, Chairman. With that, I move the resolution.
Thank you, Councilmember Nadeau. Is there discussion? Councilmember Pinto and then Councilmember Robert White.
I was trying to direct that otherwise. But I'll just say briefly, I am aware that there has been an expansion of responsibility and new legislation that has gone through the Office of Human Rights, and it's something that Councilmember Robert White, then chair of the committee, has flagged for all of us to be conscientious about. And I've just appreciated working with Director Kang on a number of issues and thinking through how to make an idea come into practical reality, and have appreciated her partnership with me and my team, and looking forward to a good productive year with her ahead.
Thank you. Councilmember Robert White.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to urge my colleagues to vote in support of Director Nin Kang's appointment as permanent director. I was excited when the mayor announced this, as Director Kang had been working as interim director of this agency when the Office of Human Rights was not in the best shape that we had seen, in a time where the council was continuing to put more and more on their plates. I have found Director Kang to be a thoughtful partner, even where we disagreed. We talked about it, we understood where we disagreed, and we worked together well. Our teams worked together well. I've seen her pay attention to staffing up the office, to stabilizing such an important agency, and focus on retention of quality staff that she has in the Office of Human Rights. So I look forward to voting in favor of the Director Kang's confirmation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember. No further discussion. The vote will be on PR 25-15. Madam Secretary, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Allen.
Yes.
Councilmember Allen votes yes. Councilmember Bonds.
Yes.
Councilmember Bonds votes yes. Councilmember Freeman.
Yes.
Councilmember Freeman votes yes. Councilmember Gray.
Yes.
Councilmember Gray votes yes. Councilmember Henderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson votes yes. Councilmember Lewis George.
Yes.
Councilmember Lewis George votes yes. Councilmember McDuffie.
Yes.
Councilmember McDuffie votes yes. Chairman Mendelson.
Yes.
Chairman Mendelson votes yes. Councilmember Nadeau.
Yes.
Councilmember Nadeau votes yes. Councilmember Parker.
Yes.
Councilmember Parker votes yes. Councilmember Pinto.
Yes.
Councilmember Pinto votes yes. Councilmember Robert White.
Yes.
Councilmember Robert White votes yes. Councilmember Trayon White.
Yes.
Councilmember Trahan White votes yes. Mr. Chairman, there are 13 yeses.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. The resolution is approved unanimously. We'll turn now to emergency legislation. The first measure is protecting consumers from unjust debt collection practices, technical clarification amendment. We have the emergency declaration resolution 2023 PR 25-87. So moved. I circulated an amendment a short while ago. So I believe I just said moved with regard to the declaration. The amendment will actually be to the underlying bill, which provides some additional time to public utilities as to applicability. So members may want to look for that. It was circulated by email, that amendment. I move the declaration, and I probably should say a little bit more. The permanent law, DC Law 24-154, which was approved last year by the council, became law last fall, had an applicability date of January 1st, 2023. Public utilities are subject to the requirements of the law when attempting to collect consumer debt. Public utilities, as are all businesses, all debt collectors, are subject to the law. Some of the requirements in the law conflict with existing requirements applicable to public utilities. Those requirements being in Title 15 of Chapter 3 of the DC Municipal Regulations. For example, the debt collection law, which we approved last year, at 28-3814 D5, prohibits debt collectors from, quote, visiting or threatening to visit the household of a consumer at any time for the purpose of collecting a debt, other than for the purpose of serving process in a lawsuit, unquote. However, under the DCMR adopted or promulgated by the Public Service Commission, utilities are required to make reasonable efforts to contact a customer prior to disconnection, and this contact may explicitly include in-person notification. In-person notification may be necessary when a utility is unable to reach the customer via phone or electronic mail. That's just one example of the conflict. To avoid confusion or negative impacts on customers or utilities, it is necessary to clarify that certain specific regulatory requirements for utilities that are in Title 15 of Chapter 3 of DC Municipal Regulations are permitted under the law. That's what this emergency does. And so I move the declaration. Is there discussion? Councilmember Louis George.
I just had a quick question. Basically, my understanding, it gives the utilities until May to comply with the debt collection law.
The amendment will.
The amendment will, okay. And so that's like a 3-month
Yes.
postponement?
Yes.
Okay. And do we know why, like, in the meantime, Washington Gas is charging 40% more than last year, this year?
I'm not quite sure what, so the bill deals with debt collection. It doesn't deal with what the rates are, and presumably whatever Washington Gas is charging was approved by the Public Service Commission.
Okay,
So, but this bill doesn't deal with rates.
right. Okay, I mean, I think this amendment is going to help. And maybe it'll change sort of the trajectory we've been seeing with the charging that we're seeing by Washington Gas this year.
Yes, and
That's the hope.
I'm happy to discuss this with you.
Thank you so much.
Further discussion on the declaration. We'll have a roll call vote. This vote is on PR 25-87. Madam Secretary, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Bonds.
Yes.
Councilmember Bonds votes yes. Councilmember Fruman.
Yes.
Councilmember Fruman votes yes. Councilmember Gray.
Yes.
Councilmember Gray votes yes. Councilmember Henderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson votes yes. Councilmember Louis George.
Yes.
Councilmember Louis George votes yes. Councilmember McDuffie.
Yes.
Councilmember McDuffie votes yes. Chairman Mendelson.
Yes.
Chairman Mendelson votes yes. Councilmember Nadeau.
Yes.
Councilmember Nadeau votes yes. Councilmember Parker.
Yes.
Councilmember Parker votes yes. Councilmember Pinto.
Yes.
Councilmember Pinto votes yes. Councilmember Robert White.
Yes.
Councilmember Robert White votes yes. Councilmember Trahan White.
Yes.
Councilmember Trahan White votes yes. Councilmember Allen.
Yes.
Councilmember Allen votes yes. Mr. Chairman, there are 13 yeses.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. The declaration is approved unanimously. I move the underlying bill, Bill 25-89. And I also will move this amendment that I circulated electronically. The amendment, essentially what the amendment does is it says, and I read, this section shall apply to public utilities as of May 2nd, 2023. So if there's no objection, the amendment will be accepted. And I'm not hearing any objection. So we have the bill as amended before us. Discussion. On the bill, since the declaration was approved unanimously, we'll do a voice vote on the bill as amended. All those in favor of Bill 25-89 as amended, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any no votes? The bill's approved unanimously. PR 25-84, Hotel Enhanced Cleaning and Notice of Service Disruption Clarification Emergency Declaration Resolution of 2023. Councilmember Bonds.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. In April 2022, the council passed the Hotel Enhanced Cleaning and Notice of Service Disruption Temporary Amendment Act of 2022. This emergency and temporary legislation authorized the mayor to issue regulations that establish requirements for cleaning and maintaining DC's hotels and motels, and to establish standards for public notice of lodging establishment service disruptions. This important legislation protects the safety of our residents, visitors, and hospitality workers by ensuring that our hotels and motels work diligently to limit, of course, the spread of the virus. With daily cleaning of our hotel rooms, we greatly reduce the likelihood of infestation and other health threats to guests and our workers. Moreover, though the hotel industry was among the hardest hit by the pandemic, the American Hotel and Lodging Association reports that the U.S. hotel industry is projected to surpass pre-pandemic levels of demand. Recently, WTOP reported that the hotel industry occupancy averages 70% in the district. As of May, the accommodations subsector in DC employed 10,500 people, which is 88.6% more than in May of 2021. The accommodations subsector provides lodging or short-term accommodations for travelers, vacationers, and others. Another 46,000 persons are employed in the food service subsector. This accounts for a 48.3% increase. While the council has protected this subsector with legislation throughout the pandemic, the temporary bill will expire later this week on Friday, the 10th of February. As we see tourism in the district grow towards pre-pandemic levels, it is essential that we continue to provide guests with routine and enhanced housekeeping. And that's the nature of today's bill. The emergency and temporary legislation before us today will reauthorize the provisions of the previous bill and will include a new section to exempt lodging establishments that operate on an extended stay model. And I urge my colleagues to support this measure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I move the emergency declaration resolution.
Thank you, Councilmember Bonds. We have the declaration before us. Is there discussion? Councilmember Pinto.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you so much, Councilmember Bonds, for your work on this important issue. I represent Ward 2, as you know, and Ward 2 has almost 70% of all of the hotels in the city. And so I care deeply and want to see very badly more people have jobs, more people come back to work, more people use our public transportation to get to work. And I continue to believe that this is not the best intervention for the council to mandate the daily operations of one of our industries. I think there are a lot of important levers that we can use around pay and incentives to get people back to work. And I don't think that mandating daily room clean for our hotels is the appropriate path forward. And so I am not going to be supporting this extension today, but I look forward to working with you on the permanent bill so we can think about what the real challenges are for our hotel workers and trying to address them in a way that's going to prioritize their safety and well-being, and in a way that's not using a different lever to solve a different challenge. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Further discussion? Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To some extent, I share Councilmember Pinto's concern about legislating in an area like this. We have legislated in this area for now, and we have a gap that is coming. I was heartened this morning when there was some conversation about the parties working together to try to hammer out an agreement and deal with these issues amongst each other. I think that would be the healthiest outcome that we could have. In light of that, I think it's important to extend this, to create a window in which that kind of negotiation can happen. And I hope that the union and the hotel associations can sort this out. It is critically important both that our hotels be strong and that our downtown economy begin to come back, and tourism is going to be an important part of that, but also that we provide work to people who really need it. So I'm hoping that together the union and the hotel association can sort it out. And I'm delighted to try to give you some more time to do it.
Mr. Chairman.
Councilmember McDuffie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the concerns raised by both my colleagues and appreciate that they might be on either side of the vote on this, but I want to acknowledge how well, as the chair of the Committee on Business and Economic Development, I've been able to work with both Local 25 and the Hotel Association, particularly over the course of the pandemic. And this is one of the areas, though, that I did not directly work with either party on. And so I was also encouraged, as was Councilmember Fruman, in hearing that there's some room and some efforts to work this out so that perhaps it could be ironed out and the details of permanent might reflect some consensus. I wanted to ask through you to Councilmember Bonds, what's your understanding of how negotiations are going, or if they're even happening right now? And do you plan to introduce a permanent version of this, or just so where are we with this at this point? Because what we're doing here is extending it both for 90 days in an emergency, but it's also a temporary measure on the agenda as well.
Yes, that is the plan right now. Of course, you know, negotiations will take some time. This is an area where I'm sure both parties are dug in, to be very honest. On one hand, we want to keep everyone in our city working. On the other hand, we want to make sure that we, as a council, do not venture too strongly into our private sector and attempt to call the shots. So it's a very delicate situation. Right now, we feel that in order to gain some time, we just have to continue with what we have. Of course, we are going to run out of that time in 225 days. And so we will ask both parties to spend more time negotiating in order for us to fashion a permanent bill, or we'll be at the point where it'll die.
If I could, I hate to interrupt, just I have
That's
about
all
30
right.
seconds left and I want to follow up. I'm gonna reach out to you just offline to talk to you a little bit more about this. And I think I'm gonna reach out to both sides of this to see where things are. You did move both an emergency and a temp. What's the thinking behind both? I mean, 90 days gives them, I would think, ample time to try to hash something out. What's the thought about the temporary version in the 225?
The temporary version we feel is appropriate. This is, again, this is about employment and making sure that we keep our community employed. So the 225 days gives us a little more time to really air the linen, so to speak, and come to a better conclusion.
My plan is to support the emergency, Mr. Chairman, just for 30 seconds more. My plan is to support the emergency. I did want to ask, have you heard from the Hotel Association, Councilmember Bonds?
Not directly in the last, I would say 30 days.
Got it. Thank you.
Mhm.
I'm going to venture in here on a couple of issues. So one is, I've had several discussions with Local 25, and they've reached out several times to the Hotel Association. And I'm hopeful that with this successive emergency, that the Hotel Association will be more willing to sit down with Local 25 and work things out. So I echo the sentiment from several other council members in that regard, that ideally the Hotel Association and the workers come to an agreement instead of us. The second thing I want to say is that 90 days may not be enough. And generally, our general counsel doesn't like us to do successive emergencies. And the law is clear that we can do a successive emergency if there is a bill that's gone to the Hill, which is what the temporary would do. So we buy ourselves more than 90 days by having the temporary on the agenda as well as the emergency.
If I could, Mr. Chairman, question to you.
Yeah.
I'm gonna support it, but I wanted to just ask, if you talked to the Hotel Association?
I've been waiting for them to call.
Okay, that's how it works. Okay. Just curious because, everybody's talking
problem
about,
coming in and talking to me last fall.
I mean, everybody's talking about both sides.
They
of
had
this.
no trouble coming in and talking to me last fall.
Everybody's talking about both sides of this, but it seems like there's only one side.
They talked to me many
represented.
times last fall.
So what I would do as chair of the Committee on Business and Economic
They were
Development,
knocking on my door last fall.
what I would do as the chair of the Committee on Business and Economic Development is reach out to both sides, actually, Local 25 and the Hotel Association, see where things are. I wish I had done it before today if I thought that there was not some effort to move this along, perhaps I would have, but I do appreciate your efforts, Councilmember. And that you all have heard from at least one side of this, but I plan to reach out to both sides. Thank you.
No further discussion. Councilmember Pinto, second round.
I don't want to be too aggressive about this. I see where the votes are. I just want to invite all of us to think about where the line is on intervention in private industry to mandate what their operations look like. And if people would be supporting it for the restaurant industry, for any other private business to say, here's how many people you have to hire and here's how you have to conduct your business. I just invite all of us to think about that line as we continue to proceed down this path. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. If there's no further discussion, I believe we have the declaration before us. Madam Secretary, would you call the roll? It's PR 25-84.
Councilmember Freeman.
Yes.
Councilmember Freeman votes yes. Councilmember Gray.
Yes.
Councilmember Gray votes yes. Councilmember Henderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson votes yes. Councilmember Lewis George.
Yes.
Councilmember Lewis George votes yes. Councilmember McDuffie.
Yes.
Councilmember McDuffie votes yes. Chairman Mendelson.
Yes.
Chairman Mendelson votes yes. Councilmember Nadeau.
Yes.
Councilmember Nadeau votes yes. Councilmember Parker.
Yes.
Councilmember Parker votes yes. Councilmember Pinto.
No.
Councilmember Pinto votes no. Councilmember Robert White.
Yes.
Councilmember Robert White votes yes. Councilmember Trayon White.
Yes.
Councilmember Trayon White votes yes. Councilmember Allen.
Yes.
Councilmember Allen votes yes. Councilmember Bonds.
Yes,
Councilmember Bonds votes yes. Mr. Chairman, there are 12 yeses and 1 no.
I'm sorry, Madam Secretary, the vote again was 12-1.
Correct, Mr. Chairman.
The declaration is approved. Thank you, Madam Secretary. We have the underlying bill, Bill 25-85. Councilmember Bonds.
So move, Mr. Chairman.
Is there discussion? We'll do a voice vote on this because the declaration was 12-1. The vote is on Bill 25-85. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Are there any no votes?
Mr. Chairman, please record me as voting no.
Councilmember Pinto will be recorded as voting no. The bill is approved. Next measure is local business enterprise clarification, emergency declaration resolution of 2023. Councilmember McDuffie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This new round of emergency and temporary legislation that we're going to take up soon will extend the council's action last June, which closed a loophole in the district CBE law that allowed many large out-of-district businesses to legally certify as local business enterprises. The temporary is set to expire on February 10th. The Committee on Business and Economic Development is awaiting the release of the district's disparity study that hopefully will inform what additional legislative changes may be warranted to update and further expand the CBE Act and perhaps, as the committee has indicated for the last few years, create a minority and women business enterprise program in the District of Columbia finally. Until then, this new round of legislation is necessary to ensure that truly local firms continue to have a fair shot in the district government's contracting and procurement process. With that, I would move the declaration.
Thank you, Mr. McDuffie. We have the declaration before us. Is there discussion? Councilmember Parker.
Mr. Chairman, a question for Councilmember McDuffie. Is there an update on the delay of the disparity study?
No, but I welcome you to join me in the oversight hearing for the Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development, where I will certainly pose that question.
Yeah.
I think it is it's long overdue. I think it's extraordinarily important. We have not had an MBE program in the District of Columbia since the courts overruled it back in 1991. So I've been working diligently on this over the past few years. I know that DMPED has a contractor who had been engaged in doing the study, and I plan to follow up with them.
Happy to work with you on that.
Thanks.
Further discussion? The vote will be on the declaration PR 25-97. Madam Secretary, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Gray.
Yes.
Councilmember Gray votes yes. Councilmember Henderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson votes yes. Councilmember Louis George.
Yes.
Councilmember Louis George votes yes. Councilmember McDuffie.
Yes.
Councilmember McDuffie votes yes. Chairman Mendelson.
Yes.
Chairman Mendelson votes yes. Councilmember Nadeau.
Yes.
Councilmember Nadeau votes yes. Councilmember Parker.
Yes.
Councilmember Parker votes yes. Councilmember Pinto.
Yes.
Councilmember Pinto votes yes. Councilmember Robert White.
Yes.
Councilmember Robert White votes yes. Councilmember Trayon White.
Yes.
Councilmember Trayon White votes yes. Councilmember Allen.
Yes.
Councilmember Allen votes yes. Councilmember Bonds.
Yes.
Councilmember Bonds votes yes. Councilmember Freeman.
Yes.
Councilmember Freeman votes yes. Mr. Chairman, there are 13 yeses.
The declaration is approved unanimously. Thank you, Madam Secretary. We have the underlying bill, Bill 25-97. Councilmember McDuffie.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Discussion. This declaration was approved unanimously. We'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Are there opposed? I don't hear any no's. The bill is approved unanimously. Next measure is medical cannabis clarification emergency declaration resolution of 2023. PR 25-98. Councilmember McDuffie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As a part of the March 2021 through 2022 medical cannabis facility licensing round, all medical cannabis facility registration applicants were constrained by a cap on the number of cultivation center and dispensary registrations permitted in each ward. The caps limited an applicant's ability to secure affordable, appropriate cultivation center and dispensary facilities for their proposed cannabis businesses. The available properties within the permitted wards were limited and some had issues such as inadequate power, ADA access, and other issues regarding essential building infrastructure. The applicants were forced to select such facilities when other more appropriate facilities exist in other wards that would require substantially fewer capital expenditures by the tenants to make necessary improvements to the facilities. Medical cannabis licenses were conditionally issued to 2 equity impact enterprises who were awarded a total of 2 cultivation center registrations and 1 dispensary registration on September 28th of last year. The Medical Cannabis Amendment Act of 2022, enacted on January 30th, removed the caps on the number of cultivation center and retailer. And the retailers are what we formerly refer to as dispensaries. But it removed the caps on the number of cultivation center and retailer registrations per ward. With this change in the law, the enterprises who were awarded the licenses on September 28, 2022 must still operate under caps removed by the act shortly thereafter, putting these businesses at a significant disadvantage as they are unable to obtain more optimal properties that are compliant and available for cultivation center and retailer operations. This emergency will remedy this issue and enable the enterprises to have the option to change their cultivation center or retailer location to another compliant property that was previously unavailable to them due to the cap. Emergency legislation is to amend the act, which is projected to become a law at the end of March, to allow these businesses the ability to locate the optimal properties, which will enable them to begin operations more quickly and better serve registered patients, as the act will permit other successful applicants to do that very thing. With that, I would move the declaration.
Thank you, Councilmember. We have the declaration before us. Is there discussion? Other than to note that I'm co-introducing or co-moving this and obviously in support. The vote will be a roll call vote on PR 25-98. Madam Secretary, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Henderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson votes yes. Councilmember Louis George.
Yes.
Councilmember Louis George votes yes. Councilmember McDuffie.
Yes.
Councilmember McDuffie votes yes. Chairman Mendelson.
Yes.
Chairman Mendelson votes yes. Councilmember Nadeau.
Yes.
Councilmember Nadeau votes yes. Councilmember Parker.
Yes.
Councilmember Parker votes yes. Councilmember Pinto.
Yes.
Councilmember Pinto votes yes. Councilmember Robert White.
Yes.
Councilmember Robert White votes yes. Councilmember Trahan White.
Yes.
Councilmember Trahan White votes yes. Councilmember Allen.
Yes.
Councilmember Allen votes yes. Councilmember Bonds.
Yes.
Councilmember Bonds votes yes. Councilmember Fruman.
Yes.
Councilmember Fruman votes yes. Councilmember Gray.
Yes.
Councilmember Gray votes yes. Mr. Chairman, there are 13 yeses.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. The declaration is approved unanimously. We have the underlying bill, Bill 25-99. Councilmember McDuffie,
So moved.
discussion? By a voice vote. All those in favor of the bill say yes or aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The yeses have it unanimously. The next measure is general obligation bonds and bond anticipation notes for fiscal years 2023 to 2028. Authorization emergency declaration resolution of 2023. Otherwise known as PR 25-96. Councilmember McDuffie.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. This emergency measure is necessary to ensure that the District of Columbia can borrow in a timely manner and take advantage of favorable market conditions to provide funding for or to reimburse the district for funds already expended on fiscal year 2023 capital projects approved and undertaken pursuant to the district's fiscal year 2023 budget and financial plan. This legislation is identical to the legislation that the Committee on Business and Economic Development held a public hearing on in December 2022 that was reintroduced in council period as Bill I think 25-4 and is pending in committee. With that, I would move the emergency declaration.
Thank you, Councilmember McDuffie. We have the declaration before us. Is there discussion? We'll have a roll call vote on PR 25-96. Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Louis George.
Yes.
Councilmember Louis George votes yes. Councilmember McDuffie.
Yes.
Councilmember McDuffie votes yes. Chairman Mendelson.
Yes.
Chairman Mendelson votes yes. Councilmember Nadeau.
Yes.
Councilmember Nadeau votes yes. Councilmember Parker.
Yes.
Councilmember Parker votes yes. Councilmember Pinto.
Yes.
Councilmember Pinto votes yes. Councilmember Robert White.
Yes.
Councilmember Robert White votes yes. Councilmember Tran White.
Yes.
Councilmember Tran White votes yes. Councilmember Allen.
Yes.
Councilmember Allen votes yes. Councilmember Bonds.
Yes.
Councilmember Bonds votes yes. Councilmember Freeman.
Yes.
Councilmember Freeman votes yes. Councilmember Gray.
Yes.
Councilmember Gray votes yes. Councilmember Henderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson votes yes. Mr. Chairman, there are 13 yeses.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. The declaration is approved unanimously. The next measure is Bill 25-95. It's the underlying bill. Councilmember McDuffie.
So moved.
Discussion. We'll do a voice vote since the declaration was approved unanimously. This is Bill 25-95. All those in favor say aye.
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 Are there any no votes? I don't hear any. The bill is approved unanimously. Next measure is PR 25-110. District Department of Transportation Fiscal Year 2023 Reprogramming Approval Emergency Declaration Resolution of 2023. Councilmember Allen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Before I begin, for anyone in the chamber today or watching on live stream, my remarks are going to include references to suicide, which I know can be triggering for some. If you or anyone you know is in crisis, you can find help by dialing 988 for the National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline or the District's Department of Behavioral Health's helpline at 1-888-7-WE-HELP. The underlying measure here will approve a shift of $850,000 within DDOT's budget to allow DDOT to move forward with the design of suicide deterrent measures on the William Howard Taft Memorial Bridge along Connecticut Avenue Northwest. As you all know, there have been 2 deaths by suicide from the Taft Bridge in the last year, one in April of 2022 and one just last month, along with at least 3 additional suicide attempts during that time. Research shows that constructing barriers that physically restrict access to bridges is the most effective bridge suicide prevention approach. Adding suicide deterrent measures reduces suicides by 86%. In 1986, the district installed suicide barriers on the Duke Ellington Bridge, and suicides have decreased by 90% since then. Notably, and as evidenced by the Ellington's Bridge close proximity to the Taft Bridge, a barrier on one bridge does not increase the suicide rate on neighboring bridges. It's important to emphasize that suicidal feelings are often temporary, and preventing a suicide can give a person in a moment of crisis time that can save their life in the long term. Time allows those intense feelings of crisis to diminish and for those in crisis to get mental health support and resources. Research shows that 9 of 10 people who attempt suicide and survive will not die by suicide at a later date elsewhere or with another method. And overall, suicide deaths often decline throughout the surrounding area after bridge barriers are in place. After the April 22 death by suicide from the Taft Bridge, a group of advocates, including Dr. Chelsea Van Thought, whose partner died by suicide from the Taft Bridge, has urged the district to take action. In response, an interagency group including DDOT, DBH, and the Office of the City Administrator and the Mayor's Office of Community Relations has met to investigate short and long-term deterrent measures for the Taft Bridge and other district-owned and maintained bridges. That group spent several months writing a scope of work to procure a bridge architect for the Taft Bridge, including input from DBH to ensure that the procurement documents included best practices for suicide deterrence. In the immediate term, DDOT, with the input from DBH, has designed and installed signage on the Taft Bridge, as well as the Calvert Street Bridge that publicizes suicide prevention measures. DDOT has engaged with many federal and local agencies that will need to review and design of the suicide deterrent measures on the bridge in order to facilitate eventual construction. I've seen some concerns about the impact of suicide deterrent measures on the views from the bridge or the visual design of the bridge. And I want to be clear, there are a variety of designs that DDOT could choose from, and there will be an opportunity for public input on the type of deterrent to be built. But the construction of deterrent measures on the Taft Bridge is now a question of when and not whether it will happen. Putting up a barrier on the Taft Bridge will save lives, and that's really the end of the analysis. As you all know, it's very rare the council would approve a reprogramming on an emergency basis. And Mr. Chair, if I could just have 60 more seconds.
Without objection.
But as we learned in January, any delay in this project could cost lives. It's estimated that 135 individuals' lives are impacted by the loss of a loved one to suicide, and that the likelihood of those survivors dying by suicide is higher than that of the general population, causing a ripple effect within the community for generations to come. I want to thank the team at DDOT and DBH who have been working on ensuring the design of the bridge is consistent with best practices for suicide prevention, and the advocates who have educated me and many others and our executive agency partners about this issue. I want to ask my colleagues to support this measure today. And again, I want to repeat that if you or anyone you know is in crisis, there is support available by dialing 988 for the National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline or the district's Department of Behavioral Health's helpline at 1-888-7-WE-HELP. There is hope. And with that, I move the declaration, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Allen. Is there discussion? Councilmember Fruman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The preventive barriers on the Taft Bridge are long overdue. In the last 12 years, we've had 13 suicides on the Taft Bridge. Installing the preventive barriers, as Councilmember Allen has said, will save lives. Having people stop and think and go back can absolutely, in high percentages of the time, avoid suicide entirely. We all need to be grateful to Dr. Chelsea Van Thoff, who's led the advocacy on this since the loss of her partner. She personally reached out to me. I'm sure she reached out to many of the people here. It's been a labor of love and sorrow for her, and I hope is gratifying to her that we're making progress on this important issue that she brought to our attention. I'm also grateful to DDOT for working as hard as they have on this issue. They took it seriously. They convened the group. I've met with that group. They've been looking for practical solutions, and now they're moving as expeditiously as possible to get this done. It is important that we get this work done and get it done as quickly as possible and save lives and avoid that terrible ripple effect that Councilmember Allen talked about. Each suicide affects many, many people, and we can avoid it. Let's get it done.
Thank you, Councilmember. Further discussion? I just want to note, I've had several conversations with Ms. Van Toff. And some of those conversations, or one of them occurred when I was in San Francisco and actually talked about bridge suicides and suicide prevention with the president of the San Francisco Board of Supervisors, who noted that it was only in the last few years that they erected barriers on the Golden Gate Bridge, which is considered an iconic landmark structure. And they were able to figure out, in terms of design, barriers that seem to have been very satisfactory for that bridge. So if there's no further discussion, we have the declaration before us. And this is PR 25-110. Madam Secretary, would you call the roll?
Councilmember McDuffie.
Yes.
Councilmember McDuffie votes yes. Chairman Mendelson.
Yes.
Chairman Mendelson votes yes. Councilmember Nadeau.
Yes.
Councilmember Nadeau votes yes. Councilmember Parker.
Yes.
Councilmember Parker votes yes. Councilmember Pinto.
Yes.
Councilmember Pinto votes yes. Councilmember Robert White.
Yes.
Councilmember Robert White votes yes. Councilmember Trayon White.
Yes.
Councilmember Trayon White votes yes. Councilmember Allen.
Yes.
Councilmember Allen votes yes. Councilmember Bonds.
Yes.
Councilmember Bonds votes yes. Councilmember Fruman.
Yes.
Councilmember Fruman votes yes. Councilmember Gray.
Yes.
Councilmember Gray votes yes. Councilmember Henderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson votes yes. Councilmember Lewis George.
Yes.
Councilmember Lewis George votes yes. Mr. Chairman, there are 13 yeses.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. The declaration is approved unanimously. We have the underlying bill, Bill 25-117. Councilmember Allen.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Discussion? Since the declaration was approved unanimously, we'll have a voice vote on Bill 25-117. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. If there's no objection, we'll take the next two emergencies in block. They are both confirmations related to the Board of Ethics and Government Accountability, or BEGA. These will be the declarations we'll take in block, and then the underlying resolutions. PR 25-93. The the District of Columbia Board of Ethics and Government Accountability, Melissa Tucker, confirmation emergency declaration resolution of 2023. And PR 25-91, the District of Columbia Board of Ethics and Government Accountability, Norma Hutchison, confirmation emergency declaration of resolution of 2023. Councilmember Bonds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. These emergency resolutions would reappoint Norma Hutchison and Melissa Tucker to the Board of Ethics and Government Accountability, commonly referred to as BEGA, for a term to end on July 1, 2028. BEGA's role is to investigate alleged ethics law violations by district government employees and public officials, provide binding ethics advice, and conduct mandatory training on the district government's code of conduct. According to the DC Code, all BEGA board members shall be appointed for a 6-year term with the advice and consent of the council. The clock for the council's 90-day review period began on October 21, 2022, and these nominations were later referred to the Committee on Executive Administration and Labor on January 6 of this year. With that said, council review on these confirmations ends tomorrow, which is February the 8th, 2023. Seeing that these two confirmations would be deemed disapproved on the 8th of February, I held a public roundtable to consider their nominations as to simply for the reappointment to BEGA. The nominees' testimony and questionnaires from the roundtable have been made available to all members and staff. For background, Ms. Hutchison, now retired, served as the Deputy Managing Counsel for the Capital Metro Law Office of the United States Postal Service Law Department. Ms. Hutchison is the current chairperson of BEGA and has served on the board since 2016. The second nominee, Ms. Tucker, is an attorney advisor of the Office of Congressional Affairs under the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Office of the Inspector General. Ms. Tucker is also a current member and has served since 2019. From the roundtable, both nominees expressed their honor and privilege to serve on BEGA. When asked about their greatest accomplishments serving on BEGA, Ms. Hutchison noted their ability to execute BEGA's mission, address concerns from citizens, and resolve issues without any controversy. Ms. Tucker also added that their knowledge of law and the ability to determine the merit of potential investigations was also paramount. These confirmations are being moved on an emergency basis to account for timing since there was no markup. If Ms. Hutchison and Ms. Tucker are not confirmed by today, their nominations will be deemed disapproved. And it's very important for these positions to remain filled as to not interrupt BEGA's meaningful work. Next.
Without objection.
All right, all things considered, I'm pleased to support these confirmations and move these emergency resolutions. And I ask my colleagues to vote in favor of these nominations. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councilmember Bonds. Is there discussion? What's before us is PR 25-93 and PR 25-91, which are the declaration resolutions. Madam Secretary, would you call the roll?
Chairman Mendelson.
Yes.
Chairman Mendelson votes yes. Councilmember Nadeau.
Yes.
Councilmember Nadeau votes yes. Councilmember Parker.
Yes.
Councilmember Parker votes yes. Councilmember Pinto.
Yes.
Councilmember Pinto votes yes. Councilmember Robert White.
Yes.
Councilmember Robert White votes yes. Councilmember Trahan White.
Yes.
Councilmember Trahan White votes yes. Councilmember Allen.
Yes.
Councilmember Allen votes yes. Councilmember Bonds.
Yes.
Councilmember Bonds votes yes. Councilmember Fruman.
Yes.
Councilmember Fruman votes yes. Councilmember Gray.
Yes.
Councilmember Gray votes yes. Councilmember Henderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson votes yes. Councilmember Lewis George.
Yes.
Councilmember Lewis George votes yes. Councilmember McDuffie.
Yes.
Councilmember McDuffie votes yes. Mr. Chairman, there are 13 yeses.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. The declarations are approved unanimously. We have the underlying resolutions, PR 25-94, District of Columbia Board of Ethics and Government Accountability, Melissa Tucker Confirmation Emergency Approval Resolution 2023, and PR 25-92, District of Columbia Board of Ethics and Government Accountability, Norma Hutchison Confirmation Emergency Approval Resolution of 2023. Councilmember Bonds.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Discussion. We'll do a voice vote on these two approval resolutions. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Are there any no votes? The ayes have it unanimously. Resolutions are approved. We have the temporary legislation. If there's no objection, we will consider under temporary legislation number 1, 3, 4, 5 in block. That's Bill 25-90, Bill 25-98, Bill 25-100, and Bill 25-96. And to be clear, I believe on the emergencies, there was one that had an amendment, and that was the protecting consumers from unjust debt. And so if there's no objection, that amendment is incorporated in the temporary. Madam General Counsel, is that clear?
Yes, it is, Mr.
For
Chairman.
enrollment purposes. But I'm not hearing any objections, so
Mr. Chairman,
yes,
just want to double check that Bill 2586 is not being moved in block.
correct. That's not included.
Okay, thank you.
So again, it's 25-90, 98, 100, and 96. I think we do a voice vote on this. In block, unless there's discussion. On those four measures, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The vote is unanimous. Those four are approved first reading unanimously. Bill 25-86, Hotel Enhanced Cleaning and Notice of Service Disruption Clarification Temporary Amendment Act of 2023. Chairman Bonds, do you want to say so moved?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Discussion. Voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Please record me as voting no.
I believe Councilmember Pinto is the only no vote. Councilmember Pinto is the only no vote, being recorded as no. That bill temporary is approved on first reading. That is going to conclude the business of this legislative meeting. There is a committee of the whole in 2 weeks, which means February 21st. And there might be a couple of measures for markup then. So time is 1:52 and this meeting is adjourned.